Hi everybody, this is Professor West and welcome back to Java Programming. Last week, as you can see, we talked about switch statements or case statements, and I still have a case statement up here on the screen, and I'm going to be using this for my examples today, so if you would like to pause this video and copy them down real quick, you should do so. And you might also note that I've created an input statement here to accept the value of grade rather than how we previously just initialized it. And so grade equals the scanner statement, which accepts whatever is entered and stores it as grade. So right now, it doesn't matter if they enter a capital A or capital or lowercase a, it's going to run this one. A B would run this one, and C, and so forth. So as I said, if you haven't already paused and written all this down, you might want to. And I'm just going to run it and show you what happens. Please enter the student's grade. This line's obviously the first one. And then it's going to accept what I enter. I'm going to put a lowercase b, why not? And it comes up and it says, great job, you got a B, which is exactly what I told it to say. If I run it again, and let's say this time I give them an F, and it says, oh, I'm sorry, but an F won't cut it, because that's what I've told it. This week, we're going to talk about loops. So a loop does exactly what it says. It loops. It repeats a chunk of code again and again and again until some condition is met. So, for example, right now, this program is set up to ask you to enter a grade, allow you to enter the grade and accept it as grade, and then perform one check and put the output depending on what it says. If I were to put this in a loop, I could tell it to do that 5 times or 10 times or 100 times or however many times I want. And that's the power of loops. We don't have to rewrite the same code over and over. We simply give it a command that tells it how many times to repeat it. And so there are several different kinds of loops. The first one we're going to deal with is called a while loop. So the only thing you have to do to have a loop is to have a place for the loop to start, a condition that has to be met, and a place for the loop to end. So I'm going to come here before I ask them to enter amount, and let's create a variable. I'm going to call it int x, why not? And I'm going to set it equal to 0. Okay. And then I'm going to have my loop begin, and I'm going to say something like while x is less than, let's say 5. And I'm going to add an open bracket, and then I'm going to come down after, and I'm going to add the close bracket. So everything, oops, actually I added that in the wrong spot. I meant to add it after that one, because this one's actually for my switch statement. Notice how they both lit up. Let me go ahead and put a comment here so that I don't forget. It's a very helpful thing to do sometimes. This one closes the while loop. That one closes the switch. And then this one will be for the main. Closes the main, which begins right here. And then this last one will close the whole class. So it's a good idea to have these little comments on here. As I've said before, the computer will completely ignore them. It doesn't matter that I misspelled the word "the" here. So it's a good idea to try not to misspell stuff just because it makes you look bad. You know, somebody else is using your program, but as far as the computer's concerned, it won't see it anyway, so it doesn't care. So now I've got my while statement, my condition, and right now x will equal 0. I've told it to go through this as many times as it needs to until x is no longer less than 5. As long as this statement is true, x is less than 5, it's going to loop. Now my problem right now is I didn't tell it to add 1 to my x, which means x will always stay 0, and this will loop over and over and over and over and over 100 times, 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times, and it'll never end unless I actually tell it to end. And that's what we call an infinite loop, because it just never stops. It goes on infinitely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add one little line that says x equals x plus 1. So what I'm telling it is, whatever the value of x is, it's now going to be that same value plus 1. And why does it not like that statement? That's a good question. Oh, it doesn't like it because I left it in the switch. The switch closes here. So, for example, right now, it doesn't matter what they pick. If they chose A, it would run this line. The break would send it to here, which would run the next line, which would tell it to loop. And this will never run. So let me get this out of here. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to put it after the switch ends, but before my program loops. Let me move this over too, because I like to have things lined up. Okay. So once this switch ends, this is going to be the end of my switch statement. No matter what they choose, A, B, C, D, or F, this is going to end. X is going to be incremented by 1. I could have also said x plus plus. I just did it this way to show. And then it's going to loop as long as x is less than 5. So the first time it goes through, x is 0 right now. So 0 is less than 5. That's true, so it's going to go through. At the end, it's going to add 1. X will be 1. 1 is less than 5. That's true, so it's going to go through. So in all, we should see this go through 5 times. Let's try it. Please enter student's grade. A. And great job, you got an A. Please enter a student's grade. This student also got an A. Great job. Please enter a student's grade. Oh, this one got a D. Oh, earning a D is okay, but you need to work harder. Please enter a student's grade. This guy got an F. Oh, I'm sorry, F won't cut it. Please enter a grade. This should be the last time. F. And I'm sorry. And then that's it. We didn't tell it to do anything else, so the program just ended. But as you can see, I only added this line of code, well, these 2 lines of code here, and then these 2 lines of code, and now suddenly all of this code is going to run however many times I want. Watch this. Oh, you don't want it to run 5 times, you want it to run 500 times. That's all there is to it. Now it will run 500 times. That would be a lot of grades to enter, but for the purposes of what we're doing, you can see how this can save you a whole lot of time and effort. We do this a lot even with little bits of code, because it's just so much simpler than rewriting the same code over and over and over. So here's a couple things you need to know. With a while statement, the very first thing it does when it gets to this loop, is it checks this condition. So as long as x is less than 5 when it gets here, this code's going to run. So what happens if x was 7? Let's run it and see. Oh, the build was successful. The program ended. Since x is 7, this was false. This condition here, 7 is not less than 5, so it's false. So none of this ever ran. It went right down to the end of the while loop, because that's where it's at. And then it just ended because we didn't have anything else for it to do. Now, our next loop that we're going to talk about is called a do while loop. The only difference is, I'm going to copy this. Let's go ahead and cut this. I'm going to put the word do right here at the front instead of the while part. And then down here at the end, where it closes the while loop, I'm going to add my while condition and a semicolon. So what this is going to do, this is very interesting. When it gets to this do, notice there's no test here. So no matter what this is, it's still going to run this program, or this part of the program, one time before it ever even gets to the test. It could run it 100 times, it could run it 1,000 times, it could do just the same as the while loop. The only difference with this is all of the code within this loop will run at least one time, no matter what this value is. So let's try it. It's still 7. Please enter student's grade. On the other one a while ago, it didn't run. Now it ran one time. If I went back and did like I did a few minutes ago, I had this at 0. Enter student's grade. F. I'm giving everybody F's right now. But I just did that so you can see that was 5. So it did 5 times and it ended. That's exactly how many times the while loop did when X started at 0. The only difference was this code right here runs one time no matter what before it tests. So the output was the exact same as long as this number was lower than the condition. But if it was higher, then it would have been different because this code would have ran one time in the do loop and would not have ran one time in the while loop. So, and for the record, a lot of people get caught up on which loop you should use when. They all do the exact same thing. They all repeat a chunk of code a certain number of times until some condition is met. The difference is here, like I said, with the do loop, this code would have ran one time no matter what. And with the while loop, it would have tested and possibly not ran one time. But other than that, the whole function of it looping and stuff, it's all the same. Okay, the next kind of loop that I wanted to show you is called a for loop, F-O-R. So, the syntax for that is for, open parentheses. And then we do our variable. Let me go ahead and comment this one out so it doesn't give me an error, because it doesn't like for you to redefine a variable. Redefining means that you've already created it, but you're creating it again. int x equals 0, semicolon. Then my condition, x is less than 5, and then my incrementation, x plus plus. So let me come down here. I'm going to comment out the rest of that line. So what happens now is, and I don't need this anymore. So what this is doing is it has all of the control with it. It creates a variable that we're going to use for the counter. The very first time this for loop runs, it creates this variable called x and it sets it equal to 0. Then it will test, is x less than 5? Yes, it is, so it will run this code. When it gets to the end, x plus plus, the third part of the for statement, executes, which adds 1 to x. And then it comes back up. Now it skips this part after the first time, and it goes straight to the condition. So x would be 1 now. Is 1 less than 5? Yes, it is. So it would run this code again. Then it would run the incrementation again. Then it would come back up. Is 2 less than 5? Yes, it is. Run this code. Run the incrementation, come back up. It's 3 less than 5. It's 4 less than 5. It's 5 less than 5. And it would exit. So once it exits, if anything ever comes back and calls this up and starts this for loop again, it would run this first part again, create this variable called x, set it to 0 so that it would always go through the right number of times. It wouldn't just remember that, oh, it was 5 last time. So that's very important. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. We'll get to, you can have loops within loops. You can have loops in functions and call loops. You can have all kinds of stuff. So this is a really good example of a for loop. Now, let me show you one other thing real quick. There are times when you want to create an infinite loop. And here's a very simple way to do it. For semicolon semicolon. I did not create a variable, I do not have a test, and I do not have anything to increment. This loop is going to keep running over and over and over and over. It could run 1,000,000 times, it could run 1,000,000,000 times, it could run however many times it needs to until I hit the stop button manually. Now you may be asking, why on earth would you ever want to do that? Now, there's a number of reasons why you might want your loop to continue running. And maybe you just wanted to keep going. I mean, if this were a cash register program and you were at Walmart, you wouldn't know how many times you wanted this loop to end or to execute. All you know is every time somebody scans a number, it would need to find that item, find the price, add it to the subtotal, and keep going. And it wouldn't matter if somebody bought 3 items or 3,000 items. You would need it to keep going until some condition was met. So, how do we know when to exit our for loop? Or any loop? We can simply add a break statement. So, let's see. How about I do something like, I'm going to copy these 2 lines, and I'm going to paste them down here so I can change them up and show you an example. Would you like to enter another grade? Yes or no? And then I'm going to accept it as, let's accept it as answer for now, which means I need to come up and create answer. And then I could say something like, if answer equals y, break. Oops, I'm not supposed to use double quotes there. I'm supposed to use single quotes. So, now, every time I enter a grade, it's going to come up and ask me, would you like to do another grade? And as long as I don't enter a capital Y, this break statement will never run. Now, this break statement and this break statement and this break statement ended the switch. Remember that? So, if they entered case A, it would output this line, and then the break statement would end the switch, and it would exit. This one is not in the switch. This one is in the loop. So, this break statement ends the loop. Let's test it out and see. Please enter a student's grade. Okay, this one gets an A. Well, great job, you got an A. Would you like to enter another grade? I did it backwards. Let me stop this. I should have said if it's no. I apologize. That happens sometimes in programming. I should have said if it was no to break. Because obviously, would you like to enter another grade? Yes means yes, I want to enter another grade. So let's try it again. Please enter a student's grade. Okay, this guy gets an A. Great job, you got an A. Would you like to enter another grade? Yes. Please enter student's grade. A. Would you like to enter another grade? Yes. Now, something interesting is happening here. I told it if they enter a capital N to break, which means that this break statement will only run if they enter this capital N. If you enter anything else, it won't. So, please enter the student's grade. Okay, he got an A. Watch this. Would you like to enter another grade? X. Oh, okay. Enter the student's grade. A. Would you like to enter another one? Lowercase n. No. Oh, okay. Please enter a student's grade. This is going to keep going until I enter a capital N. But when I do enter a capital N, now it's finished. Because I told it to keep going until they enter a capital N. Now, if I wanted to, I could create a variable for the A's and a variable for the B's, and I could put it in here. In fact, let's do that real quick. Let's have int grade A, comma, grade B. Oh, you know what? I want to set each one to 0. I'm just going to do it this way. Grade C. Oops, I forgot the semicolon at the end of that line. Anytime you see something different, like when I hit the enter key, it didn't come back to the front, that immediately alerted me that I had messed up. Because the others all returned to the beginning of the line and that one didn't. So now I could come in and say grade A plus plus. So anytime they grade B plus plus. Anytime they enter a B, I'm now adding 1 to the B. Grade C plus plus. Grade D plus plus. And grade F plus plus. So now, every time it comes through, if they do an A, it's going to add 1 to the grade A. If they do a B, B, and C, and so forth. I can come up, once I exit my loop, and I could say something like system.out.println A's, or let's do a little more descriptive. Let's say number of A's. And notice I put a space there. Oops, I wanted to do an equal first. Equals, and then a plus sign, and then grade A. And now I'm going to copy this line because that's so much easier than typing it all those times. Oops. I'm going to paste that. 1 for B, 1 for C, 1 for D, and 1 for F. And now all I have to do is go in and change them. And now let's watch what happens. Please enter student's grade. Okay, this guy gets an A. Great job. Would you like to enter another one? Well, yes. Please enter student's grade. Okay, this guy gets an A. Would you like to enter another one? Yes. This guy got a B. Yes. A C. Yes. Another A. Yes. And let's have 1 F. And now we're finished. Now it's coming up and it's telling me, you can't really see it as well. Number of A's, there were 3. Number of B's, there were 1. C's was 1. D's was 0 and F's was 1. So there's an awful lot of things you can do with these that that you just don't think about until it's time. But anytime you want something to happen over and over, all you need to do is add a little loop. This is still my loop that was an infinite loop. And I exited with the break statement. I could have done this with the do loop that I created first. I could have done it with the while loop that I created first. I could have done it with the for loop that I created. It doesn't matter. It's still a loop, and it's still just going to repeat the same code over and over until the condition's met. In this case, there's no condition, but I did add a break statement. So, guys, that's all there is to loops. And as I've said before, this is something that you'll just have to practice with and play around with. It's a lot of fun the more you get into it, so I hope you are practicing. And I will see you in the next segment. All right, bye.